Abusuafo ne adɔfo high for 1GH aha na obetin sema ewosewuti bia ekoso Ghana no aha na obetin nyina na saa bring sema etwegu no ano hie pa betan sa ne bekoye nsem no so no esese wa subscribe man bo modin aso be subscribe se ne be ya de ba so no onsa bekoso akabina so hu niema ewosewuti bia ekoso Ghana no so nsa bekoso akabina so obedi amfie ni nkyem ne nka de won kyem enche bia na Supreme Court and as a Chief of Justice Mahama tokono edbeto abontin say omo ye 5 new appointments into the Supreme Court court Kesi no omo ye 5 new appointments ede omakoma edin yeden ebai na ansana process we nia because no there was a meeting at the Jubilee House at say meeting how draw course no ano hie pa na sabri no NDC for I hold some press conference at Fiifi Kwetey na edienim na the Judicial Council no etimi original den rebuki and I say disagree with it original say sa hihye ya tokono ne Attorney General ne Akufo-Addo person de ban ya dia emboa Ghana especially akakakram yakoto aba Sabri no the Judicial Council no aba abonten be liki some meeting bia NDC for nsaka Fiifi Kwetey in a lead this press conference no then sema wo yi go on the over seeing in the ikokuti come honing kuti Fiifi Kwetey just on the NDC agent.
We want to signal that we gather here today not just as members of the media but as defenders of democracy, guardians of justice, and the voices for the voiceless. Our beloved country stands at a critical crossroads. The very pillars of our democracy are under siege by an administration that has shown a blatant disregard for the rule of law and the sanctity of our independent institutions. It is our moral duty to defend our country. We need to unite under a common cause to fight to preserve the integrity of our judiciary and the very soul of our democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, it will surprise you to know that President Akufo-Addo, who has already packed the Supreme Court with an unprecedented 15 appointments, is now conspiring with the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, Justice Gertrude Araba Isabel Tokunu, to add 5 more justices to our highest courts. This isn't just a political maneuver of an already failed president. It is also an assault on our democracy, a betrayal of public trusts, and a direct threat to the integrity of our judicial system. Imagine the dire consequences of this reckless action. This government stops at nothing and is determined to create a judiciary that is no longer a check on executive power, but a mere extension of it. This is not the Ghana our forefathers fought for. This is not the democracy we pledge to uphold. Our nation deserves better, and it is our duty to stand up and protect the very foundations of our democracy. Despite the huge number of judges appointed by President Akufo-Addo to the Superior Court and the lower courts, and the 15 judges that he has already appointed to the Supreme Court in particular, the NDC has become aware of a grand conspiracy hatched by President Akufo-Addo and the Chief Justice to appoint additional 5 judges to the Supreme Court. We have cited a shocking and deeply disturbing letter from Chief Justice Gertrude Tokunu to President Akufo-Addo requesting the appointment of 5 new judges to the Supreme Court of Ghana. This request from the Chief Justice is not only a blatant violation of our Constitution, but also a flagrant disregard for the established customs and traditions that guide the nomination of judges to our nation's highest courts. The names for the 5 judges put forward by the Chief Justice in her unconstitutional, unsolicited, and self-serving requests to the president include Her Ladyship Justice Angelina Mensah Humia, His Lordship Justice Eriche Bafo, His Lordship Justice Edward Amaku Asante, Her Ladyship Justice Pamela C.A. Kuranten, and Her Ladyship Justice Ifia Asare-Botwe, the judge who is currently presiding over what we call the persecution of the Honorable Minority Leader, Dr. Kesi Pl0t. It is interesting to note that this brazen, unsolicited request from the Chief Justice, dated 30th May 2024, was promptly received by President Akufo-Addo on 4th June 2024. Subsequent to that, the Attorney General, who is the chief persecutor of the minority leader in the Court of Justice of Ifia Asare-Botwe, brazenly followed with another letter dated 21st June 2024, expressing support for the Chief Justice's unsolicited and unconstitutional request. With the President, the Chief Justice, and the Attorney General in agreement, and in furtherance of the President's grand agenda to pack the courts and annex the judiciary as an extension of the new Pl0t party, an emergency Judicial Council meeting was hurriedly convened on 24th June 2024 by the Chief Justice, who is also the chair of the Judicial Council. At the said meeting, the Chief Justice, who on the face of the record initiated the unsolicited request for the additional 5 justices to be appointed to the Supreme Court, presented the Attorney General's letter of 21st June 2024 to make a case to the Council for these appointments. Interestingly, at that meeting, the Chief Justice remained completely silent about her own unconstitutional and self-serving request to the President. Our unimpeachable sources tell us that the Judicial Council, however, unanimously stood against the reckless schemes of both the President and the Chief Justice. We are further informed that all the members of the Judicial Council rejected the proposal, citing poor and dangerous timing, especially with general elections only 6 months away. Members of the Judicial Council insisted that the next government be given the opportunity to consider the argument for the expansion in the number of Supreme Court justices, if at all necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, we have in our possession a letter signed by the President of the Ghana Bar Association, Yao Achampong Boafo Esquire, dated 29th April 2024 and addressed to President Akufo-Addo. In this letter, the Ghana Bar Association objected to the clandestine approach by President Akufo-Addo to appoint 5 additional judges to Ghana's Supreme Court, thereby increasing the number of judges on the Supreme Court to 20. President Akufo-Addo, with the connivance of the Chief Justice, had sought to hide his attempt to further pack the Supreme Court under the guise of a proposal for a minimum ceiling of 20 judges on Ghana's Supreme Court bench. The GBA's disagreement, which we find well-grounded and well-reasoned, is premised on the fact that the present proposal should have come in the form of a proposed amendment of Article 128(1) of the 1992 Constitution to set a new ceiling for the number of judges on the Supreme Court, which currently consists of the Chief Justice and a minimum of 9 other justices. The GBA argued forcefully that the request by President Akufo-Addo and Chief Justice Gertrude Tokonu to increase the minimum number of justices of the Supreme Court to 20 will lead to the circumvention of the required constitutional amendment, hence their rejection of same. The GBA proposed a review of the conventional number of justices of the Supreme Court every 10 years, calling for broader consultations with other key stakeholders such as the Council of State and Parliament. From the foregoing, it is clear that the Chief Justice sought to put forward the names of these judges as though they were being proposed by the Attorney General on behalf of President Akufo-Addo. We are completely shocked and scandalized by the extent to which the Honorable Chief Justice was prepared to consciously sidestep the due process and even breach the Constitution just to please the President and aid him to execute his unholy agenda to pack the Supreme Court. It is for good reason that Article 144(2) of the 1992 Constitution enjoins the President to make such appointments to the Supreme Court on the advice of the Judicial Council in consultation with the Council of State and subject to parliamentary approval. In the wisdom of the framers of the Constitution, this consultative process is designed to protect the independence of the judiciary. Contrary to this constitutional imperative, the Chief Justice singularly constituted herself into the Judicial Council and unilaterally acted in his name and on his behalf. By electing to write to President Akufo-Addo, requesting for this appointment and seeking a post-facto ratification from the Judicial Council, the Chief Justice sought to turn the Council into a mere rubber stamp. Nowhere in the Constitution is the Chief Justice named as the one to recommend persons to the President for appointment to the Supreme Court. We wish to state, without any equivocation, that the Chief Justice's letter is illegal and of no effect. Her actions have completely turned the due process on its head and compromised her independence as the head of the judiciary. We are concerned about a worrying pattern which irresistibly suggests that the President is appointing only loyalists of his party to this court to have control of the judiciary and escape post-regime accountability. It is also very clear that the President is packing the courts ahead of the impending presidential and parliamentary elections with judges who are sympathetic to his party. Such deliberate politicization and bastardization of independent institutions of state, including the judiciary, will negatively impact the peace and stability of our country. It is trite knowledge that without a fair and impartial judiciary, democracy and constitutionalism will suffer. That is why this must be an issue of huge national concern, as it adds to the many other issues that already pose big threats to the peace and stability of our democracy. Already, President Akufo-Addo has appointed as many as 15 judges to the same Supreme Court since 2017. This exceeds the 7 appointments made to the Supreme Court by both President ญ่ismântlé and President John Mahama over the 8 years of the NDC. President Newz appointed 3 judges to the Supreme Court, while President Mahama appointed 4 judges to the apex court. If President Akufo-Addo and the Chief Justice are not restrained in their unholy alliance to appoint 5 additional judges to the Supreme Court, it will bring to 20 the number of judges appointed by President Akufo-Addo alone to the Supreme Court. While the Constitution of Ghana does not put a cap on the number of judges to be appointed to the Supreme Court, it is very clear that the framers had operated on a reasonable assumption that all presidents will be mindful of endless appointment to the apex court and its consequences. The framers of the Constitution clearly did not contemplate an Akufo-Addo presidency, where the apex court will become packed with loyalists of the president and his political party. With general elections set to take place just in a few months, we are of the view that President Akufo-Addo must immediately halt his plans to make any further appointment to the superior courts. This is in view of the fact that he has already packed the court with too many of his loyalists, to the disbelief of many right-thinking Ghanaians and consummate Democrats. Again, there are enough judges on the bench at this particular point in time to deal with the judicial issues. More importantly, With elections on the horizon, it is fair that any such appointment with far-reaching implications on this constitutional democracy should be left to the next president of the Republic of Ghana. And this is common practice all over the world. It is only under Nana Akufo-Addo that this is being totally disregarded.
Ntebusanfo yenya te Fiifi Kwetey achese wo yi nsem ni nyina wo sie ti bia na ego a wo kire say this government Akufo-Addo na nkasa no enyemo wo yi bia record bin sida ono nko ana na aban so wetima appoint nipa nko 5 beka ho a nipa nko 20 amamako Supreme Court bin sida say one person tima appoint nipa lawyers nko na judges nko 20 akọ eye Supreme Court bin sida asabre no eye the Judicial Council etima joining NDC for fighting against this new appointment. And you say be a NDC for fighting because any of party also yin nim nyama cause other country. Oh ye be no man for so many engine jai no man for anything also the when you position. Inti no ye nyina hwe nyama cause Kenya. Near Ghana president won't ye nim nyama the AC wo. Na sabre no enyama cause the judicial system no. No na the Judicial Council it must ßREAK as regional air fight against. Na some information be na NDC for the ensaka a Fiifi Kwetey AD no air den chiremu yi amayati asese papa ye friend Akufo-Addo ni niye ni bibia chese oye failure ni niye ni bibia chese on Ghana for jonwa peno oye intino adia wuye odi fani say a democracy and as a constitution and Nketia the number of people bit married appoint omako the Supreme Court now so wow nyama we president ben aba wa BBC da especially Akroma akoto aba na oswo ni pase akogo the Supreme Court I just Fiifi Kwetey nya brie pa no kan sim bibra judicial system otiase pa yenyina so yetin sim ni bi comment section where the bit my corner comment be why then I can now subscribe so abomodi and subscribe my 100%.